The ship landed on Prime at exactly noon Galactic Standard Time. Jack stood at the window and looked at the alien world below. He had spent his whole life building things on Earth. He had fixed broken engines and designed new machines. He had never imagined he would one day stand on a planet made of crystal. The year was 2387. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. In that short time, they had explored hundreds of star systems and met dozens of alien species. Most of those species had ignored Earth. Humans were too young, too weak, and too primitive to matter. But now everything had changed. The Galactic Council had invited humanity to join their assembly. It was the greatest honor any species could receive. It meant that Earth would finally have a voice among the stars. Jack was not a diplomat. He was an engineer from a small town in Ohio. But the United Earth government had chosen him for a simple reason. They wanted someone who could think on his feet, someone who could solve problems, someone who would not be scared by alien technology or alien attitudes. Kate walked up beside him. She was the official ambassador, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years in politics and knew how to handle difficult situations. "Are you ready?" she asked. Jack took a deep breath. "I guess we will find out." The doors of the ship opened and they stepped onto the crystal surface of Prime. The ground was smooth and clear, like walking on glass. Jack could see strange lights moving beneath his feet. The whole planet seemed alive with energy. A group of tall beings waited for them. They had pale blue skin and silver hair that flowed like water. Their eyes glowed with soft white light. These were the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had ruled the council for 10,000 years. At the front of the group stood 5 females. They wore flowing robes of gold and white. Each one was more beautiful than the last, with perfect features and graceful movements. These were the 5 princesses of the Empire. Princess was the eldest. She stood taller than her sisters, with cold eyes that seemed to look right through Jack. She did not smile when she saw the humans approach. "So these are the creatures from the dirt world," she said. Her voice was musical but filled with scorn. "I expected something more impressive." Her sisters laughed. The sound was like bells ringing, but there was no warmth in it. Kate stepped forward and bowed her head slightly. "Your Highness, we are honored to be here. The people of Earth thank you for this opportunity." Waved her hand dismissively. "Save your gratitude. You have not earned your place yet. You are here because the Council requires us to consider all species, even the primitive ones." Jack felt his jaw tighten, but he said nothing. He had been warned that they would not welcome them. He had been told to stay calm no matter what. The princesses led them through the crystal halls of the council building. Everything was made of light and glass. The walls showed images of distant galaxies. The floors reflected their movements like mirrors. Other alien species watched them pass. Some were tall and thin, with bodies like stretched shadows. Others were short and round, covered in thick fur. A few had no solid form at all, existing as clouds of glowing gas. None of them looked friendly. The council chamber was enormous. It could have held 1,000 ships inside it. In the center was a raised platform where the council members sat. 12 ancient species had seats at the great table. Each one had shaped galactic history for millions of years. And now humanity wanted to join them. Took her place at the head of the table. Her 4 sisters sat beside her. Princess Myra, the youngest, glanced at Jack with something that might have been curiosity, but she quickly looked away when began to speak. "Let the record show that the species known as humans has requested membership in the Galactic Council," announced. "Let it also show that many of us believe this request is premature." A being made of living stone spoke next. Its voice rumbled like an earthquake. "The humans are young. They have existed for only a few 100,000 years. Most species wait millions of years before seeking council membership. They are also violent, added a creature with too many eyes. Their history is filled with war and destruction. They have killed millions of their own kind. Kate raised her hand. If I may speak in our defense. You may not, cut her off. This is not a debate. This is an evaluation. You will listen and learn your place. Jack watched Kate's face turn red with anger, but she held her tongue. This was not the time to fight back. Continued her speech. She listed every failure in human history. She talked about the wars, the pollution, the cruelty. She called humans selfish and short-sighted. She said they were barely more advanced than animals. Your species lives for less than 100 years, she said, looking directly at Jack. You are born, you struggle, and then you die. What can such brief creatures possibly offer the galaxy? Jack met her gaze without flinching. He did not argue, he did not defend himself. He simply listened and watched. This surprised. She had expected anger or shame. Instead, she saw only calm observation. Princess Myra noticed this too. She had never seen a being remain so steady under her sister's attacks. Most species begged for mercy or tried to prove themselves. This human did neither. Finally, announced her decision. Humanity will be given a chance to prove itself. There will be 3 trials. If you pass them all, you may keep your seat on the council. If you fail even one, your planet will be quarantined. You will be cut off from galactic civilization forever. The chamber fell silent. Kate looked pale. Even she had not expected such harsh terms. What kind of trials? Jack asked. It was the first time he had spoken since arriving. Smiled, but there was no kindness in it. Trials that no young species has ever passed. Trials of mind, body, and spirit. You will face challenges that have broken beings far older and wiser than you. When do we start? Jack asked. His calm voice echoed through the chamber. Several council members exchanged surprised looks. This human showed no fear at all. Leaned forward. You start tomorrow. I suggest you use tonight to make peace with your failure. It will come soon enough. She stood and walked out of the chamber. Her sisters followed, their golden robes flowing behind them. Kate turned to Jack with worry in her eyes. What do we do now? Jack looked around the crystal chamber, at all the alien faces watching them with doubt and scorn. He thought about everyone back on Earth who was counting on them. He thought about all the humans who had ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of something greater. Now we show them who we are, he said quietly. Now we prove them wrong. The first trial began at dawn. Jack stood alone in a white room with no windows and no doors. The walls were smooth and empty. In the center of the room floated a cube made of pure light. This was the trial of mind. Princess's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Inside this cube is a puzzle that our greatest scholars took 300 years to solve. You have 3 days. If you fail to solve it, humanity loses the first trial. Jack walked around the cube slowly. He could see patterns moving inside it, shapes that shifted and changed every second. Numbers and symbols floated through the light like fish in an ocean. 300 years, he said to himself. Okay then. He sat down on the floor and began to study the puzzle. Hours passed. The patterns made no sense at first. They seemed random and chaotic. But Jack had spent his whole life looking at broken machines and finding ways to fix them. He knew that everything had a logic, even if that logic was hidden. By the end of the first day, he had found nothing. His eyes hurt and his head ached. He lay down on the cold floor and slept for a few hours. When he woke up, he went right back to work. The second day was worse. The patterns seemed to mock him. Every time he thought he understood something, it changed. He started to doubt himself. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans were too young and too simple to compete with ancient species. But then he remembered something his father had told him years ago. His father had been a mechanic in their small town. He fixed cars that other people had given up on. The trick, his father used to say, is to look at the problem from a different angle. If everyone else is looking at it one way, Try looking at it another way." Jack stood up and walked to the other side of the cube. He tilted his head and squinted at the patterns. For hours, nothing changed. Then he saw it. The scholars had been trying to solve the puzzle from the top down. They started with the most complex patterns and worked toward the simple ones. But Jack realized that the puzzle was designed backward. The answer was in the smallest, simplest patterns at the very bottom. He began working from the bottom up. The pieces started to fit together. By midnight on the second day, he had solved half the puzzle. By morning on the third day, he had solved it all. The cube of light collapsed into a single point, and then exploded into a shower of golden sparks. The walls of the room dissolved, and Jack found himself standing in the council chamber. Princess stared at him with wide eyes. For the first time, she looked unsure of herself. "Impossible," she whispered. "No young species has ever solved the trial of mind." Jack shrugged. "I guess we look at things differently." The other council members murmured among themselves. Princess Myra leaned forward in her seat, her eyes fixed on the human with growing interest. Quickly recovered her composure. "One trial means nothing. The trial of body will destroy you." The second trial took place on a volcanic moon on the edge of the galaxy. The surface was covered in black rock and rivers of liquid fire. Poisonous gas rose from cracks in the ground. The sky was dark with ash. Danny Vega stood at the starting line with 50 other competitors. He was a soldier from Texas, 28 years old, with brown skin and tired eyes. He had served in 3 different conflicts on Earth and had seen things that still gave him nightmares. The other competitors were massive. Some stood 10 feet tall with muscles like iron cables. Others had 4 legs or 6 arms. A few could fly. Danny looked small and weak compared to all of them. Princess appeared as a hologram above the starting line. "The trial of body is simple. Cross the moon from one side to the other. The first to reach the finish line wins. There are no rules. You may use any means necessary to survive." A horn sounded, and the race began. The larger competitors sprinted forward, their powerful legs eating up the ground. Danny did not try to keep up with them. He knew his limits. He could not outrun beings that had evolved for millions of years, but he could outlast them. He settled into a steady jog, watching the terrain carefully. The ground here was unstable. Cracks appeared without warning. Geysers of fire erupted from the rock. The air was thin and hard to breathe. Within the first hour, 3 competitors had fallen into lava rivers. 2 more had been caught in gas explosions. The survivors pushed on, but they were getting tired. Danny kept his pace. He breathed slowly and steadily. He watched where the other competitors stepped and avoided the spots that looked dangerous. By the halfway point, half the competitors had dropped out. Some were injured. Others had simply given up. The volcanic moon was too harsh, too unforgiving. A massive creature with gray scales stumbled and fell near Danny. Its leg was broken, twisted at a wrong angle. It cried out in a language Danny did not understand, but the meaning was clear. It was begging for help. The other competitors ran past without stopping. In this trial there were no allies, only winners and losers. Danny stopped. He knelt beside the fallen creature and looked at its leg. The break was bad but not impossible to fix. He tore strips from his own clothing and made a simple splint. It would not heal the leg, but it would let the creature walk. "Can you move?" Danny asked. The creature looked at him with confusion. No one had ever helped it before. In the trials, helping a competitor was seen as weakness. But Danny did not care about rules. He had been a soldier. He knew what it meant to leave no one behind. Together they continued across the volcanic landscape. The creature was slow, but it knew the terrain better than Danny. It warned him of hidden dangers and showed him safe paths. They became a team. The final stretch was the worst. A storm of ash and fire swept across the moon. Visibility dropped to nothing. The remaining competitors scattered, trying to find shelter. Danny and his new ally pressed forward. They could not see more than a few feet ahead, but they kept moving, step by step, breath by breath. When they finally crossed the finish line, only 5 competitors remained. Danny was third. His ally was fourth. The first 2 finishers were unconscious, carried across by medical teams after collapsing from exhaustion. Danny was the only one who crossed the line on his own feet. Princess watched the results with a frozen expression. This was not how the trial was supposed to end. The human should have been crushed by the stronger competitors. Instead, he had survived through endurance and cooperation. Princess Myra approached Danny after the trial. She had to look down to meet his eyes, as she was nearly 2 feet taller than him. "Why did you help that creature?" she asked. "It cost you time, you could have won." Danny looked up at her without fear. "Where I come from, we do not leave people behind. Winning does not mean much if you lose yourself along the way." Myra had no answer for this. She had lived for 3,000 years, and no one had ever said such a thing to her. Back in the council chamber addressed the assembly. Her voice was cold and hard. "The humans have passed 2 trials, but the 3rd trial is the true test. No species in galactic history has ever passed the trial of spirit. Tomorrow, we will see what these creatures are really made of." She looked at the human delegation with burning eyes. "Enjoy your small victories. They will not last." Jack and Danny stood together as the council members left. Kate joined them, her face pale with worry. "2 down," she said. "1 to go." Jack nodded. "The hard one is still ahead." Danny cracked his knuckles. "Then we better find someone tough enough to face it." They did not know it yet, but the person they needed was already with them, and she carried wounds that no one else could see. Grace sat alone in her room on the human ship. She was 42 years old, with short black hair and gentle hands. She had been a doctor for 20 years, first on Earth and then on the colony ships that traveled between the stars. She had healed thousands of people in her life. She had pulled soldiers from battlefields and saved children from plagues. But there was one wound she could never heal, one pain that never went away. 5 years ago, her husband Peter and her daughter Lily had died in a shuttle accident. A simple transport flight from Earth to Mars. A mechanical failure that no one could have predicted. In less than a second, her whole world had ended. Grace had thought about giving up after that. She had thought about closing her eyes and never opening them again. But something had kept her going. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just stubbornness. Now she sat in her room and listened to Kate explain the trial of spirit. "It is a psychic chamber," Kate said. "It reaches into your mind and finds your worst memories, your deepest fears. It makes you relive them over and over until you break. The longest anyone has ever lasted is 4 hours. Most beings collapse within minutes." Grace nodded slowly. "And you want me to take this trial?" Kate looked uncomfortable. "Jack suggested you. He said you have experience with pain, but I want you to know that you can say no. No one will think less of you." Grace thought about Peter and Lily. She thought about the empty house she had left behind on Earth. She thought about all the nights she had spent crying alone in the dark. "I will do it," she said quietly. The trial of spirit took place in a chamber at the heart of Prime. The room was perfectly round, with walls that glowed with soft purple light. In the center was a single chair made of crystal. Grace walked into the chamber alone. The entire Galactic Council watched through screens mounted on the walls. Princess sat at the front, a small smile on her lips. She was certain this would be the end of humanity's challenge. "The trial of spirit begins now," a voice announced. "The subject will remain in the chamber until she surrenders or loses consciousness." Grace sat down in the crystal chair. The purple light grew brighter, and then the memories came. She was back on Earth in the hospital where she had worked. A young nurse ran up to her with tears in her eyes. "Doctor, there has been an accident, a shuttle crash. Your family was on board." Grace felt the words hit her like a physical blow. She ran through the hospital corridors, pushing past patients and staff. She reached the emergency room and saw two bodies on tables, covered with white sheets. She pulled back the first sheet and saw Peter's face. His eyes were closed and there was a peaceful expression on his face as if he were only sleeping. But his chest did not move. His heart did not beat. She pulled back the second sheet and saw Lily. Her daughter was only 8 years old. She had been excited about the trip to Mars. She had talked about it for weeks. Now she would never talk about anything again. Grace fell to her knees and screamed. The sound tore through her throat and filled the room. It was the worst moment of her life, and now she was living it again in perfect detail. The chamber showed no mercy. It played the memory over and over, the running through the corridors, the white sheets, the cold, still faces. Each time the pain was just as fresh, just as sharp. An hour passed, then two. Grace was crying now, her tears falling on the crystal floor. The council members watched in silence. Some looked away, unable to bear the sight of such suffering. Princess Myra gripped the arms of her chair. She had seen countless beings break in this chamber, but she had never seen one fight so hard. At the 3-hour mark, something changed. Grace stopped crying. She sat up straight in the chair and took a deep breath. The chamber responded by increasing the intensity. It added new memories to the loop. The funeral, the empty bedroom, the toys that Lily would never play with again, the wedding ring that Grace still wore on her finger. But Grace did not break. Instead, she did something the chamber had never encountered before. She started talking. "Peter," she said softly, "I know you cannot hear me, but I need to say some things anyway." The chamber flickered, uncertain how to respond. "I was angry at you for a long time," Grace continued. "Angry that you took Lily on that shuttle, angry that you left me alone, but I understand now. You did not choose to leave. You would have stayed forever if you could." Tears were still running down her face, but her voice was steady. "And Lily, my sweet girl, I miss you every single day. I miss your laugh and your questions and the way you used to hold my hand. But I want you to know that I kept going. I became a better doctor. I saved lives. I helped people who were hurting just like I was hurting." The chamber's purple light began to flicker faster. It did not understand what was happening. "The pain never goes away," Grace said. "But that is okay. The pain is how I remember you. The pain is proof that you were real, that you mattered. I do not want to forget you. I want to carry you with me wherever I go." She closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her. This time, she did not fight them. She did not try to push them away. She simply held them like she was holding Peter and Lily one last time. "I love you both," she whispered. "I will always love you." The chamber went dark. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the purple light returned, but softer now, gentler. The crystal chair released its grip on Grace's mind. She had been in the chamber for 6 hours, longer than any being in galactic history. Grace stood up on shaking legs and walked toward the exit. The doors opened, and she stepped out into the council chamber. Silence. Every being in the room stared at her with shock. Some had tears in their eyes, even species that had never cried before. The psychic energy of the chamber had leaked outward, and everyone had felt a fraction of what Grace had experienced. Princess rose from her throne. Her face was pale, and for once she had no cruel words to offer. Princess Myra ran to Grace and caught her as her legs gave out. The princess held the human woman in her arms, feeling how small and fragile she was. "How?" Myra asked. "How did you survive?" Grace looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. "I did not fight the pain," she said. "I accepted it. The pain is part of me, but it is not all of me. I can hold sorrow and hope in the same heart." Myra did not understand. She had lived for thousands of years and had never felt loss like this. They lived so long that death was almost unknown to them. "Your species lives such short lives," Myra said. "How can you bear so much pain in so little time?" Grace managed a small smile. "Maybe that is why we can bear it. We do not have forever to heal. We have to learn to carry our wounds and keep walking." Jack and Danny rushed to Grace's side. Kate followed, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," Jack said. "You passed the trial." Grace nodded weakly. "I did not do it for the trial. I did it for Peter and Lily. I did it to prove that love is stronger than death." The council chamber erupted in murmurs and whispers. The humans had done the impossible. They had passed all 3 trials. But Princess's face had hardened into stone. She would not accept this. She could not accept this. If these primitive creatures could pass trials that had broken ancient species, then everything she believed was wrong. "This is not over," she said coldly. "I will find a way to expose these humans for what they really are." She turned and walked out of the chamber, her golden robe sweeping behind her. Myra watched her sister leave with worried eyes. She had seen that look before. Was not someone who accepted defeat. She would find another way to destroy the humans. But for now, Grace had won. Humanity had won, and somewhere in the stars, Peter and Lily were smiling. News of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had never heard of Earth suddenly knew the name. They knew about Jack, the engineer who solved an impossible puzzle. They knew about Danny Vega, the soldier who helped a fallen competitor. And they knew about Grace, the doctor who held sorrow and hope in the same heart. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire looked weak. Princess locked herself in her private chambers for 3 days. She refused to see anyone, even her sisters. She stared at the screens on her walls, watching the same images over and over. Humans celebrating on their ships, council members praising humanity's courage, her own sisters questioning her judgment. This was not supposed to happen. The trials were designed to humiliate young species, to remind them of their place. No one was supposed to pass all 3. Certainly not these brief, fragile creatures from a small blue planet. On the 4th day, emerged with a new plan. She called an emergency session of the Galactic Council, the chamber filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The human delegation sat in their newly assigned seats, still getting used to their elevated status. Stood at the center of the chamber, her golden robes shining in the light. "I have reviewed the records of the trials," she announced. "I have found evidence of tampering." The chamber exploded with noise. Council members shouted questions. The humans looked at each other in confusion. Kate rose from her seat. "What evidence? We followed every rule. We played fair." Smiled coldly. "The trial of mind was solved too quickly. The human must have received outside help. Perhaps from one of the other council species who wanted to see the embarrassed." "That is a lie," Jack said calmly. "I solved the puzzle alone. I did not even speak to anyone until it was done." "So you say," replied. "But how can we trust the word of a species known for deception?" Princess Myra stood up from her seat beside her sisters. "This is wrong. I watched the trials myself. The humans won fairly." Turned to face her youngest sister with fury in her eyes. "You would defend them. You would stand against your own family." "I would stand for truth," Myra said quietly. "Something our family used to believe in." The chamber fell silent. No one had ever seen a princess openly oppose the eldest. His face twisted with rage. "Very well. If the council will not act on evidence of cheating, then I will use the old ways. I challenge the human leader to single combat." Jack blinked in surprise. "Single combat?" "It is an ancient tradition," one of the council members explained. "When disputes cannot be resolved through diplomacy, they are settled through battle. The winner's claim is accepted as truth." Kate grabbed Jack's arm. You cannot accept this. She is 8 feet tall and has been training in combat for thousands of years. She will kill you." Jack looked at. The princess stood straight and proud, her silver hair flowing around her shoulders. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. "If I refuse," Jack asked. "Then humanity admits guilt," said. "You will be expelled from the council and your planet will be quarantined. Your species will never travel among the stars again." Jack thought about this for a long moment. He thought about Earth and all the people waiting for news of their fate. He thought about Grace, still recovering from her ordeal in the trial of spirit. He thought about Danny, who had proven that humans could compete with any species in the galaxy. "I accept," he said. The combat would take place the next day in the great arena of Prime. Every seat was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Screens broadcast the event to every inhabited world. This would be the most watched moment in galactic history. That night, Princess Myra came to the human ship. She asked to speak with Jack alone. They sat in the small observation room, looking out at the crystal spires of Prime. "Why did you accept?" Myra asked. "You know you cannot win." Jack shrugged. "Maybe not, but I had to try. If I refused, everything we accomplished would mean nothing." Myra shook her head slowly. "I do not understand you humans. You have so little time, so little power, yet you fight against impossible odds again and again. Why?" Jack thought about the question. "I guess it is because we know our time is short. We cannot afford to waste it on fear. Every moment we spend worrying about failure is a moment we could spend trying to succeed." "But you will fail tomorrow," Myra said. "Has trained in combat for 3,000 years. She has never been defeated." "Then I will lose," Jack said simply. "But I will lose on my feet, fighting for something I believe in. That is all anyone can do." Myra was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke in a quiet voice. "Your species fascinates me. You are so weak yet so strong, so brief yet so meaningful. I have lived for 3,000 years and I am not sure I have ever truly lived at all. I have watched time pass like water through my fingers, waiting for something to give my existence purpose." She looked at Jack with something new in her eyes. "Perhaps I have been looking in the wrong places." "What do you mean?" Jack asked. "I mean that tomorrow I will be in the arena, but I will not be cheering for my sister." The next day, the arena was packed with more beings than Jack could count. The noise was deafening. Drums beat in strange rhythms. Alien voices chanted in languages older than Earth itself. Jack walked onto the arena floor in simple clothes. He had refused the armor and weapons that had been offered to him. He carried nothing but his own 2 hands. On the other side of the arena appeared in full battle regalia. Her armor was made of living metal that shifted and changed with her movements. In her hand, she carried a sword that glowed with blue fire. She looked like a goddess of war. The crowd fell silent as walked toward Jack. Her footsteps echoed through the arena like thunder. "You are either very brave or very stupid," she said. "Perhaps both." Jack did not answer. He simply watched her approach. "I will give you one chance," said. "Kneel before me and admit that humanity cheated in the trials. I will spare your life and merely quarantine your planet instead of destroying it." Jack met her glowing eyes without fear. "No." Raised her sword. "Then you have chosen death." The horn sounded, and the combat began. Struck first, her blade slicing through the air with impossible speed. Jack threw himself to the side, feeling the heat of the weapon pass inches from his face. He rolled across the arena floor and scrambled to his feet. She attacked again and again. Each strike was faster and more powerful than the last. Jack dodged and ducked, using every bit of his reflexes to stay alive. But he could not keep this up forever. He was already breathing hard and had not even broken a sweat. The crowd watched in stunned silence. They had expected the human to fall within seconds. Instead, he was still standing, still moving, still fighting. But Jack knew the truth. He could not win this battle, was too strong, too fast, too experienced. All he could do was survive long enough to make his point. He had a plan. It was a desperate plan, but it was all he had. The only question was whether he would live long enough to use it. The battle had lasted longer than anyone expected. 5 minutes had passed, then 10. Jack was covered in cuts and bruises. His clothes were torn and blood ran down his face from a wound on his forehead. But he was still standing. Was growing frustrated. She had expected to end this quickly, to crush the human and prove superiority once and for all. Instead, this small, weak creature kept dodging her attacks. "Stand still and die with honor," she snarled. Jack wiped blood from his eyes. "No thanks, I prefer living." She swung her sword in a wide arc, and Jack dove under it. He came up behind her and started running toward the center of the arena. Chased him, her anger building with every step. "Coward, face me like a warrior." Jack reached the center of the arena and stopped. He turned to Face, who was charging toward him with her sword raised. And then he did something no one expected. He dropped to his knees and spread his arms wide. Skidded to a halt, her sword inches from his throat. "What are you doing?" Jack looked up at her with calm eyes. "I am not going to fight you. You accepted my challenge. You must fight." "No," Jack said. "I accepted your challenge because I had no choice, but I never said I would fight. I said I would show up, and here I am." The arena was completely silent. Every being in the galaxy watched in confusion as the human knelt before the princess. His hand trembled with rage. "This is a trick. You are trying to make me look foolish." "No tricks," Jack said, "just the truth. You are stronger than me, faster than me, more experienced than me. If we fight, you will win. But winning will not prove that you are right. It will only prove that you are stronger." "Strength is what matters," hissed. "Strength is how the galaxy is ruled." "Is it?" Jack asked. "Your empire has ruled for 10,000 years through strength and fear, but look around you. How many of these species actually respect you? How many would stand with you if your strength ever failed?" Glanced at the crowd. She saw representatives from dozens of species, all watching with cold eyes. She had bullied and belittled them for. None of them would mourn if she fell. "You are afraid," Jack said softly, so only she could hear. "Not of me, not of humans. You are afraid of what we represent. If a species as young and weak as us can pass your trials, then maybe strength is not the only thing that matters. Maybe your whole empire is built on a lie." His grip on her sword tightened. Her whole body shook with emotion. "For 10,000 years, you have told yourselves that you are better than everyone else," Jack continued. "Better than the younger species, better than the weaker species. But we proved that wrong, not by being stronger or smarter, but by being willing to grow, to adapt, to help each other." He pointed to the section of the arena where Danny and Grace sat watching. That soldier helped a fallen competitor instead of leaving him to die. That doctor survived the trial of spirit by embracing her pain instead of fighting it. They did not win by being the best. They won by being human. Jack lowered his arms and Met's eyes. "So go ahead. Kill me. Prove to the entire galaxy that the only way can win is by murdering an unarmed man who is kneeling at their feet. Show everyone exactly what your superiority looks like." Raised her sword. Her arms were shaking. The blade hovered above Jack's head, ready to strike. The whole galaxy held its breath. Then slowly lowered her sword. Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment she looked very old and very tired. "You are not what I expected," she whispered. Jack stood up carefully. His legs were weak and his body ached all over, but he managed a small smile. "Maybe that is the point," he said. "None of us are what we expected. Not humans. We are all just trying to figure out who we are and what we believe in." He extended his hand toward her. "We do not have to be enemies. We do not have to compete for who is better. Maybe we can just be different, and that can be okay." stared at his hand for a long moment. Her whole life, she had been taught that weakness was shameful, that asking for help was disgraceful, that admitting doubt was unforgivable. But looking at this small, fragile human who had stood up to her without a weapon, she saw something she had never seen before. Courage that did not come from strength, wisdom that did not come from age, hope that did not come from certainty. She reached out and took his hand. The arena erupted in noise. Some beings cheered, others shouted in anger, but most simply watched in amazement as a princess and a human engineer stood together in the center of the arena, hand in hand. Princess Myra ran onto the arena floor and embraced her sister. "I am proud of you," she whispered. Said nothing, but for the first time in centuries there were tears in her eyes. The days that followed were chaotic. The Galactic Council met in emergency sessions to discuss what had happened. Some species demanded that humanity be expelled anyway. Others called for reforms to the Council itself. In the end, humanity was granted full membership, but more importantly, something had shifted in the galaxy. Species that had been silent began to speak up. Old alliances crumbled, new ones formed. Princess Myra became the first to formally visit Earth. She walked through the streets of crowded cities and quiet villages, marveling at the chaos and beauty of human life. She ate strange food and listened to strange music and laughed at jokes she did not understand. "How do you live like this?" she asked Jack one evening as they watched the sunset from a rooftop in San Francisco. "Everything changes so fast, nothing lasts." Jack shrugged. "That is what makes it precious. We know our time is short, so we try to make every moment count." Myra nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. Grace returned to her work as a doctor, but now she trained medical staff from across the galaxy. Beings who had never understood human biology learned to appreciate its strange resilience. Grace taught them something else too, that healing was not just about fixing bodies, but about mending spirits. Danny Vega became a symbol of human perseverance. He was offered fame and fortune, but he turned it all down. He went back to his unit and kept doing his job, protecting the people who needed protection. "I am not a hero," he told the reporters who followed him everywhere. "I am just a guy who does not give up." And she stepped down from her position as head of the delegation. She said she needed time to think, to reconsider everything she had believed. Some called her weak, others called her wise. She started writing letters to Jack, asking questions about humanity and what it meant to be mortal. He answered everyone, and slowly, over months and years, they became friends. The galaxy continued to change, not quickly and not easily. Old prejudices died hard and new conflicts arose to replace old ones. But something was different now. A seed had been planted. On the first anniversary of the trials, Jack was asked to give a speech at the Galactic Council. Beings from 1,000 worlds listened as he walked to the podium. "1 year ago you asked us to prove ourselves," he said. "You thought we would fail, and maybe we should have. We are young. We are weak. We live brief lives on a small planet in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy." He paused and looked around the chamber. "But we did not fail. Not because we are better than anyone else. Not because we have some special power or secret weapon. We succeeded because we refused to give up. Because we helped each other. Because we believed that every being has value, no matter how small or how brief." He smiled. "That is what it means to be human, not perfection, not superiority, just a stubborn refusal to stop trying no matter how hard things get." He turned and walked off the stage. The chamber was silent for a moment, and then the applause began. It started slowly, from the younger species who had always been overlooked. Then it spread to others and others, until the whole chamber was filled with the sound of 1,000 different beings celebrating a simple truth. The princesses had mocked humanity for being small, fragile, and brief. They never understood that those very qualities were the source of human strength. the urgency to live fully, the courage to love deeply, the determination to never stop reaching for something greater. In the end, humanity did not conquer the stars through force or fear. They earned their place through heart. And that, the galaxy was learning, was the most powerful force of all.